Oh, I got him on Twitch.
Okay, yeah, I see
Yep.
it. It's working.
Well, sweet. The first live review. So we're going to give everybody just kind of a minute to get connected, chat through the Facebook or the Twitch. In the meantime, a lot of you guys are meeting us for the kind of the first time, seeing what we look like and all that. So why don't we just kind of go around and do a little introduction? Why don't you kick us off, Dan, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no problem. Hey guys, so one of your admins and moderators. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I've been mixing and recording for 4 or 5 years now. I do a lot of work in live events, a lot of corporate, a lot of weddings, some concerts and festivals as well, but corporate and wedding is the bulk of my main work. About a year ago, I started my mobile recording studio business as well, which is starting to take off. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. You can check me out at danlockaudio.com, and I'll pass it off to the next person.
Oh, Wayne, we see your smile.
Am I going? Okay, because I laugh the loudest. I'm terrible at this sort of thing. I'm Wayne, live engineer for 30 years. To coincide with that, doing studio stuff. And yeah, that's basically it, really. 30 years of working in the music industry. Next.
Cool. Yeah, hi, I'm Tim. Been working in studios for 25 years now. Do a lot of live sound stuff, mostly as backline and MIDI tech. And I'm also a university tutor, teaching studios and audio technology.
Awesome. And then I guess I will go, and then you can go, Jordan. So I'm Josh. So I've been in and out of studio work probably for 20 years or so. I've spent a lot of time mixing. I'm actually focused more on film lately, so doing lots of film location sound and post sound. So that's kind of where my passion is leading me. But I still work on music and still both as a mixer and a writer, performer, bass player, and all that. So.
Well, saving the best for last, my name is Jordan. I am a solo producer for the past 15 years, starting to work on mixing as well. One of your admins, and just glad to be here for our first live review.
Awesome. So what we're going to do is we've got 3 songs for you all today. And we're going to go through them one by one, and we're going to give a good listen. And the audio is going to come through Twitch. It's going to sound really good. And after we've gone through the song, we're going to go ahead and just kind of do a roundtable as to our thoughts on primarily audio engineering aspects, so aspects of the mix. Now, we are probably going to touch on production elements as well as they come up. Although it's focused on mixing, arrangement and production has a lot to do with how the mix comes out as well. So we'll mention just some thoughts about that as well. And we'll go from there. So let me go ahead and pull some notes up. And would anybody like to say anything before we get started?
I just want to get rolling. I'm super excited to do this.
You can see I'm
happy to be here, guys. This is going to be fun.
I'm eating time. Where's my notes? All right, so this first track is from one of the users, Arul Rosario, and it is called Kavalai Ini, I believe. He can correct me if I'm butchering the pronunciation. But we're going to go ahead and give that a listen, and then we'll get feedback on it. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start that. All right, cool. Who wants to start? So there's 5 of us here, so we'll probably each just take little snippets and go around. So uh, does anybody have anything that they'd want to start with?
I thought it was really cool. I really liked that. I like the lots of stereo panning, the movement with the tablas and all that sort of stuff. That was like really good on the ear candy for like the floating around. I like the way that the strings swelled as well from up and down in the stereo image. Thought that worked really well. The only thing I'd say was that the vocal could do with a little bit more presence, maybe up a little bit more in the mix for me. And that's, but I think that's really good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to mention the tablas as well, swinging around. The strings, like you say, they were nice and full. Like the whole range of the instruments, they were. They didn't sound the bottom EQ'd out or anything. As you said about the vocal, it wasn't sparkly, and the strings maybe could deal with a bit of sort of sparkle on the top as well. But that's just personal preference. They sounded great the way they were.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying. Like, this was extremely well produced. I love the way that they combined like Western and like Indian style music, which has like more of quarter tone stuff in it than Western music does. But the blend of the two styles was really well done. I thought I don't know if the vocal needs more high end. I think there are sometimes in the mix when it's busier, when it could have just used a half dB bump in level. Because I felt like in the beginning when it was a little more sparse that the vocal was just like slightly harsh to me, just a little bit too much of the upper mids to my taste, and then it smoothed out when the rest of the production filled in. Yeah, and then I just thought like maybe the kick or like the low thump could just use a bit more weight or attack to show up on the headphones better, but that was pretty much it.
Yep, I felt pretty similarly. I was gonna say I think you nailed it on the vocals, Dan. What stood out to me is especially towards the end of the song where there's more elements that are competing, the vocal starts to get a little lost. And some of that was I don't know if it's a nylon guitar or something that's got a lot of bottom body in it that was fighting with the vocal too. Especially in the right side, it would come up, and so I think part of what could help that is automation. So as you are getting more full, you know, push the vocals up a little bit. You know, nudge the vocals up, nudge some of the other elements down a little bit, and then bring them back together. So I like to do a lot of automation, especially on those final choruses, to make everything sit just right. Because it's natural to just say, hey, we're adding this and we're adding that and we're adding all these different elements into chorus to make it exciting, but don't forget that your vocals still have to be on the top. Otherwise, you're going to lose it. So I'll double your comment on the kick drum. I felt like it was a little squashed. I don't know if that's because it just maybe the compressor was in and the attack was really fast and it was bringing the oomph. So maybe open up the attack a little longer to let more oomph, or maybe it's just a sample. But I could have used more bottom in that kick. There was a lot of pop, but not a lot of oomph. And then what did you think, Jordan?
Did we lose Jordan?
Have we lost him?
Oh no.
Nope, that was just my end. Sorry. As far as the track, I love the Indian sound. Love it. There was a part where we had some beautiful bass that came in that hit me on the headphones that I loved. The only note that I really had was the background vocals sound a little phased around 248. I don't know if it was a chorus effect or something, but it was a little bit interesting. I don't know if you guys heard that as well, but everything sounded great on my end. Love the feedback that you guys gave. Really nice track. Love it.
Cool. Before we move on, is there anything else anybody else wanted to put in there? I've got one more thing to bring up, but I want to leave it open for you guys if you got something.
Yeah, I would just add with everybody else's comments. I think from an overall spectrum of the mix, the low mids could like come down a little bit on everything, like from like a mastering perspective. sort of between like 250 and 500. So 250 and 500. And then maybe it could do with a little bit more top on it, but that's probably more mastering area than mix, I'd say.
Yep. Cool. The only other feedback I had was that during the solo, where the guitars are doing their thing, it's a little right heavy. And there's one that comes in on the right first, and that's nice and full and it's great. And then the answer comes in and it's more centered as opposed to countering on the other side. So I personally felt that it could be balanced a little bit more to be even, or at least make the call and answer more split between the two. It wasn't bad by any means. And I noticed that there was some far left hits in there too. So that's all I say is during that solo section, maybe bring out the overall fullness. Even if you start right heavy, bring it out when you bring that second, guitar in there. From a mix wise, I mean, obviously this is a mixed track, not mastered. If we look at some of the levels, just because I know some people are curious about, where things run at, the integrated on that was -15. So a pretty decent start for a mix level. There are some peaks in it. If we look at the waveform, it's mostly pretty balanced, and then there's some parts where it hits 0 dB essentially. So definitely be mindful of the headroom when providing a mix to your mastering engineer. In a digital realm, of course, you can easily bring things down a little bit, but it's better to give a good target. So if you see spots where you're blowing it out a little, just pull it back, and it'll make your mastering engineer a little happier that they don't have to automate their side of things. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to the next song. And then it looks like Marcus is here. Thanks for joining. And Mazen, it's Marcos. We love the feedback and the questions too. So if anybody's got anything, this is a live review, so put your questions out there. If something we say isn't fully making sense, let us know. If you have a question about aspects of the songs, maybe we can answer, or maybe the person who submitted this will be on and they can answer questions about that as well. So this next one is submitted from Justin Etre. Again, forgive me if I brutalize any pronunciations. And this one is called Bad Snacks. And so I'm going to go ahead and mute it up and play this track. All right.
I don't know about you guys, but I want to go first on this one. This was nothing short of fantastic as far on my end. Note I put in my phone was sounded like Elliott Smith and David Byrne hanging out at the Neutral Milk Hotel while the Avalanches play by the pool. So it kind of had that like singer-songwriter going with the Elliott Smith and the David Byrne. Kind of had that weird kind of just sound that Neutral Milk Hotel puts out, but it had that cool kind of like break beats that the Avalanches would sample. I'm just trying to put together what kind of genre that was, and I want to know what your influences are. But besides that, it was I don't know what to say. I loved it. I'm gonna go listen to it again.
All right, just make sure you pay attention to the stream for the next one, Jordan.
Okay, will do.
I love the song too. I don't know what I was expecting by something called Bad Snacks. That wasn't it, but I loved it. I love the like different instrumentation and stuff going on. I love the ideas. The vocal was like, again, like just not what I was expecting, but I loved it. Just in like the delivery and how it was performed. Something I wasn't sure worked super well. It sounded to me like there were sort of two low end drums going on. One sounded a bit like a concert bass drum, and one was almost more like a low level, like electronic kick drum. And I'm not sure the two are working that well together. I'm not sure if it's a timing thing or a tuning thing. I don't know. My suggestion would be maybe experiment instead of a concert bass drum, go with like a more pitched drum, like a timpani or something like that, because they're just kind of fighting each other for space and you're not really hearing the rhythm of either drum at the same time. So I'll pass it on to the next person now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not sure if it works or doesn't work. There was like a push pull, so it was making me feel awkward and uncomfortable, and I'm not too sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. There was part of me that was going, "Oh," and then there's another part of me that was going, "Wow, that's interesting. That's really fucked up." So it's I'm gonna have to give it a few more listens, but it was really, really good, really, really good, and it just
maybe it was trying to make you feel like you had a bad snack.
Yeah, it put me on edge, made me feel uncomfortable, which I think is a good thing in some stuff. I don't know. I'll pass it on.
Go for it, Tim. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Tim.
Like this.
I
just made myself massive on my screen and didn't unmute myself. That was stupid. Yeah, I really like that as well. That had a very sort of James Blake cinematic orchestra kind of vibe to it. I like that sort of quirky and unusual vibe in music. Mix-wise, the things that popped out to me while we were listening then was the kick that comes in right at the beginning. When the rest of the band, if you like, are in, that kick sounds fantastic. But when it's at the beginning, when the kick was on its own and the music was a lot sparser, it sounded very separate to the rest of the instruments. And I'm not entirely sure why that would be, but myself, if I was mixing that, I'd tweak that bass drum sound a little bit when it's a lot more exposed like that. I think the vocals were fantastic, like really dynamic and sort of really emotional delivery as a result of that dynamic in the vocal. They were nice and loud in the mix. I like a nice loud vocal. And the bass sound, someone touched on the bass earlier, really nice, deep, round bass sound doing the job that the bass should be doing. But with the cello loop that was in there, it sounded at times like there was a tuning thing going on. I'm not entirely sure if it was tuning or a microtonal thing, and I've just heard it wrong, but there's little clashes here and there. The rallentendo at the end was fantastic. That little slowdown was lovely. And looking at the waveform while it was playing, it looked like the tops of those waves are already, like the thing's already been compressed a touch. If you're going for mastering, obviously push that a little bit more. I like to mix into a compressor, and it looked like you've done that already. But yeah, great work. I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, this is the kind of song that's really hard to provide mixed feedback on because it doesn't fit a typical mold. Like if somebody's going for a rock tune or a pop tune or a rap tune, there's some pretty obvious conventions and kind of like tropes that are tried and true. But this is one of those songs where literally the whole thing is a work of art. So, my feedback is going to be as subjective as the next person's. And I really dug the track. Like Wayne said, it makes you feel something. Like throughout the whole thing, there's a raw emotion. So as a song itself, I was super stoked about it. I could almost see it as like a scoring cue where like there's some kind of chaos and beauty going on. From a engineering mix standpoint, really my feedback again is going to be very subjective, but I think that it gets very muddled, like intentionally so towards the end. But I think there's a little too much chaos going on for me. So if confusion is the main point, then nailed it because it's a cacophony of sound. For me personally, I think I would have liked to had. It sounded like there was either multiple cellos or multiple violins going at the same time, and they were both occupying very much the centered space. It sounded like they were stereo tracked, but they were still very centered in nature. And so I think there could be layers of separation in that to pull them out so it's still a cacophony of sound, but I've got more distinct things I can follow. Instead of it being a centered mush, it's kind of a more panned out. But again, that's completely just my own perspective. Go for it, Dan.
Yeah, I just want to say this is a perfect example of when you're mixing and you want to make a lot of things fit together, you don't necessarily want every single thing to sound amazing on its own. Like you need to carve out frequency space and dynamic space for them. And like as a whole, they still sound good. But if you were to solo like one violin or one cello, it wouldn't sound good on its own. And that's okay. And, if there are times when maybe that cello or that violin that doesn't sound good anymore when everything is together is on its own and you need it to sound good, well, then you just split the tracks, or you can automate your EQ to have two different EQs of that same instrument for different sections of the song. So I think that's just like a perfect example of like a really common thing where like, you go to one of these big name mixers like CLA and you solo a guitar track, like a rhythm guitar track, and it's carved out to shit to fit in with everything else, and it sounds like crap on its own, but it sounds great in the mix. So that's something to keep in mind, is like just don't mix in solo.
Yeah. And yeah, I have to judge the track as a whole. And I think it accomplished what I believe the artist was going for, which is this evolving, growing, chaotic emotion that starts cleaner but gets muddled and then breathes at the end. I like the dynamic release of it because it definitely goes somewhere. So from a production standpoint, I like how it ramps up. You got all this stuff going on, and then it's like we get a chance to breathe for a second. And that's why I say I can't really judge it based on a standard other than on its own and just things that I might do. Like the only last thing I will say about it is that the bass was great. My personal preference would be it was very bottom end heavy, and I like to have maybe a little more of the top, like maybe some of that 1176 grit, just to make it stand out a little bit more. That's going back to my everything's kind of mushed together. But again, if the whole point was to have that chaotic clump, I think you nailed it. So that's all I'll say about it is it's really preferential. There's so many different ways that this piece could have gone. Also, it's awesome.
I've got two final things. Please keep submitting and please reach out. So I would love to work together. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and on that point, when these songs are done and released, please let us know. I'd be happy to both promote good music, but also just to see, where the songs may have changed or become better or evolved because of some of this feedback. So it'd be awesome to see follow-ups on all of this stuff.
I just have a couple other small little points I want to get to before we move on to the next one. One of them is mixing related. So in the beginning, there was this like guitar line happening on the right side, I'm pretty sure. And I really liked it. And then it came back again later, but I almost didn't hear it because it was so low in the mix. So I think that's another like automation opportunity just to make sure that doesn't get lost, because it's a great, interesting little line that gets lost. And I would love to hear just a little bit more of it so that it grabs your attention and moves you away from it. And then the other thing is near the end, there's that cymbal roll going on. Like it's like mallets on a cymbal. And just to me, like I have a lot of experience with classical music and I've heard a million cymbal rolls. And I would just say that like the one you have sort of goes up and down and back up again before it fades out. And it takes a long time to do that. So I would say maybe just get a swell that, you know, goes in one direction for the whole time until you want it to fade out, or just fade it out faster. But the like up and down cymbal swell is, it doesn't really work for me. At least in my experience. But again, that's also a personal preference thing. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, you reminded me of another element at the end, which was interesting, where it almost sounds like somebody brushed cloth up against the microphone. It's like a whoosh. And it's one of those things where my first inclination is like, oh, you got to take that out. That's clearly a mistake. But then when I, you know, shut up and go, well, that was probably a very intentional part of the sound because it is about chaos and organicness. So who am I to say, cut out what sounded like maybe somebody brushed up on the mic and just leave it? You know, it makes part of the tune. So if it was a mistake, it sounded cool. If it wasn't, it still sounded cool. So that's one of those things, like as Wayne brought up earlier with his Green Day example, you know, sometimes there's things in there that are imperfect, but those imperfections really make it unique because now we had something that caught on to us. We're like, oh, that's interesting. If I didn't have anything to say about it, well, then you kind of failed because I wasn't that interested in your piece.
I would love to bring up a really famous example of that, and that would be the cough that was left in on Wish You Were Here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. The older I get, the more I like the things that make it stand out and are unique. I used to be, gotta make it perfect and everything's gotta be clean and I'm gonna denoise this, and I just don't do it anymore. I find that it just has better life if you just leave it, like let it be.
Yeah, another good example of that sort of stuff is last Led Zeppelin album. You can hear John Bonham breathing and playing the drums, which is evident if you get the files of him just playing the drums. It's crazy how much you can hear him breathe. And also on that note, stuff like Yo-Yo Ma, where he's playing the cello, you can like really hear him breathing. It's just sort of like you would think that you'd want to take that out, but it just adds to the realness and the authenticity of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Led Zeppelin, Wayne, because I was actually thinking of another Led Zeppelin example. There's that one song, the name is escaping me now, but it was on one of their first few albums where you, like, as soon as you hear the squeak of the kick drum pedal, you can never listen to that song again because it's infinitely ruined. So, like, yes, I generally love those little things that you hear, but not always. Not always.
I was going to mention that exact thing, that squeaky bass drum. And I'm sure there's one of the Nirvana ones. I think it might be on Bleach. It's one of the earlier fellas. You can hear the drum stool. He's got a creaky drum stool. You can hear him creaking around that. It just, as you said, it makes things real. And that imperfections, timing things, tuning things, weird little sounds. The odd little one makes things real and human. It makes music good to listen to. Totally agree with that.
Yep. I personally think that all music production is like a swinging pendulum. Like there goes through trends and things come and things go. And we went from completely raw to, oh wow, this is polished, and like some of the, you know, like the grungy stuff went from like nasty to really clean and super produced. And then people are like, well, screw that, let's make it dirty and nasty again. And now, you know, we've gone through a phase where everything's got to be beat sliced and quantized samples and all that. And I think that we're starting to see a more swing back. We're like, okay, we did that. Now we want to bring some of the life back in. So I think we're going to see a resurgence in bringing back some of that natural in certain genres. Obviously, some genres are naturally inorganic, and that's fine the way they are. You know, I'll be clear that I don't think there's a right or wrong. I have a preference, but you know, clearly music reaches out to different people in different ways. Well, cool. Let's look.
That's not actually Rick Rubin in the chat. Come on.
No, if it was Rick Rubin, I'd be crying. I'd be like, oh my God, Rick.
I'd probably quit right now. Just be like, well, I peaked. I'm done. I reached my true peak.
Rick, the work you did with the Mars Volta was wonderful.
I could do with some beard tips as well from Mr. Rubin.
Truly. So the next track is from Victor Bala, and it's called, I believe, Res. And I'll give a quick shout out to Victor in general. He's really been pulling people into the group and getting the group to grow. So for that, we all want to just thank you. I've noticed that you're really repping the group for us, and we appreciate that because we put so much into this. So we love seeing that people are enjoying it and growing. So thank you, Victor. So on that note, this is Res, and I will go ahead and play it. This one looks, I can tell by the waveform, is a bit softer. So we will probably have to turn up the level a little bit on your end. So just forewarning, because yeah, it looks pretty low. All right, here we go.
Egy emlék kopottan sétál, kiüresedett utcáin. Csak én ismerem, mint múló, idegen monológ. Leszünk utcai állókép. Keskeny réstátom léptei alatt várja, hogy belebújjam. Leszünk utcai állókép. Időt álló, más semmi nincsen. Időt álló, semmi nincsen. Leszünk utcai állókép. Időt álló, álló idő, más semmi nincsen. Időt álló, álló idő, más semmi nincsen. Időt álló, más semmi nincsen. Időt álló, semmi nincsen. Időt álló, más semmi nincsen. Időt álló, más semmi nincsen. Időt álló,
All right, so what I have learned today is that we've got some amazing musicians and artists in this group. Like, holy crap. So I could not have asked for better selections. Like, what an interesting collection of music from the group. This has been really cool. So I'll just start with that. That was really freaking cool.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. musically it's fantastic. But from a mix perspective, from my point of view, it's how can I explain this? It sounds like a triangle, as in like the mono information, really really good. Yeah, everything's there. But then when you go to the sides, it like drops down in volume rather than being linear with the center information. So it still fills your ears. So you're sort of like you're going from like here, and then as it goes out to the sides, like it drops down to here. That's what it sounds like to me. So everything that's in the stereo, I'd bring it up so it's at the same level as the mono information.
On that, and I'll just give one little thing on that. I noticed that the snare, which is more centered, is a little thinner and lower than when the toms come in. They're gorgeous. Those toms, like boom, boom. I'm like, wow, those are great. But the snare doesn't have the same intensity, and part of that, could just be the miking, or maybe using a compressor to fatten it a little bit and to bring it up. But yeah, I did notice that.
Down a bit more as well.
What was that?
I said I'd pan those toms out a bit more.
Yeah, they were definitely out a little bit, but yeah, that was the main thing. Just to piggyback off what you were saying, is that snare was not at the same caliber as the toms.
Yeah.
That gated reverb on that snare was lovely, though. A little nod to the 80s in there. I really like that sound.
Yeah.
Again, props to that trumpet player.
Great song. Yeah, that trumpet was great. I felt the solo could use a bit more to make it special. Maybe just make it a little bit bigger, slightly louder, maybe a little grittier even, or like a bigger reverb or a little more delay, just something to make it a bit more special. It was perfect when the vocals came back and it was like sitting slightly behind the vocals. I loved it for that. But when it was doing the solo, it just needed to come up front a little bit more.
I'm just glad the solo was there. I was very surprised. I wasn't anticipating it at all.
I'm always down for a surprise trumpet solo.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, my other main comment about this is like I love the groove, I love the song, but just when the guitar came in at the beginning, right before the main vocal, it just felt like it came in on a weird spot, like kind of like an upstrum or like just something not confident when it came in. Like it didn't come in saying, "Here I am, I'm meant to be here." It kind of came in like, "Oh, is this where I come in?" Which is something that like when I was studying music, like we always talked about, like when you're coming in, you come in strong. You tell people, yes, I am meant to be here, because that keeps the song moving forward. If you come in scared, people hear it, and it doesn't give the audience confidence. It doesn't give, a good impression of your playing, of your music. So just, yeah, you got to fix that. I don't know if like maybe just the first slight bit of the transient was cut off in editing, or the compressor is just a little bit too fast, or maybe the take just wasn't that great, but the guitar needs to come in confident at the beginning of the song.
Yeah, and with that in mind, while we're talking about the guitar, there's like a nice big wide acoustic guitar sound in there. Then when the choruses came in, it was the same nice big wide acoustic guitar sound. Maybe like stick another track in there for the choruses. This is just, again, personal preference and what I'd be inclined to do. In the choruses, chuck in another track of like a guitar through like slightly higher gain on an amp or something, just for a little bit of grit and a bit more power in the choruses, and sort of change that dynamic. And you can drop from chorus to verse, and I'm sure you understand what I'm saying there.
Yep, and I felt that it was a little bit of that with multiple elements that you were talking about, Dan, where the guitar felt a little awkward coming in. The beginning of the track kind of steps in, like it adds something, and then another thing gets added, and another thing gets added, and another thing gets added, and it felt kind of awkward to me getting up there. But then when it all came together and started moving, I'm like, this feels like a cohesive, built piece together. And so I think I agree with you in that there's something that can be done to make it just smoother and as it ramps up. I also had the same kind of thought with the guitars. One thing, and this is a production / tracking thing, is so much of the track is organic in the feel, like every aspect of it. But the acoustic guitars are recorded through the pickup, and I think if you had mic'd the guitar up instead of recording it through the acoustic pickup, it would have suited the song just a little better, a little smoother. It wouldn't have been as noticeable with that sharp strumming attack. I could be completely wrong, but I just think from a production choice, I would have rather mic'd up that acoustic than using the built-in pickup, because I think you lost an element of that package or organicness. At least that's what it came out to my ears. And then yeah, the widening or the layering that Tim is mentioning. One thing you can do if you don't have layers is play with the width. So if you've got that wide stereo, maybe narrow it down before it gets to the choruses, and then widen it out when it gets more exciting. If you don't have other layers, ideally I like to work with layers. I just put another thing under there for the exciting part, and then ease it back out. From the bass and the kick, I absolutely loved it. I wouldn't change a thing. That kick drum and that bass guitar was doing it for me the entire time. So
Oh man, I was going to say the bass was a little bit too nosy. So
well,
I'm glad that you liked it. I guess that's again a preference thing.
I am a bass player and I like aggressive bass. So take everything I say about bass guitar with a grain of salt, because literally probably every musician I've ever worked with has said, dude, your bass is great, but it's too goddamn loud. So
less triangle, more bass.
But
I mean, yeah, I love aggressive bass. I just feel like it was centered around like a weird, like nasally, nosy frequency, and I would have rather moved that up or down slightly.
Yep. I just felt it was unique and fit the track. But again, it's all preference. 5 different mix engineers and you get 5 different mixes. So
a tiny little thing as well that I made a note on, and again it's in the editing and the mixing bit, is at the end of vocal phrases, you can hear a little bit of mouth noise, so just edit that up a little bit tighter, because that was poking out the mix at me and I could hear you doing that.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that kind of leads into one of my favorite tricks with vocals is when you're automating them, is the ends of phrases, ends of words, you just ride them up like half a dB to a dB just to keep them a little more present towards the end of the phrase, and it just adds a little bit of a layer of polish. But if you have those little mouth noises, those little breaths, those little weird little things at the end that you haven't edited out, it makes it super obvious. So it's important to clean up your vocal tracks and get rid of that, because once you start automating and pushing it up, once you start compressing, once you send it to mastering and get it, and it gets limited and louder and louder and louder, that stuff becomes more and more and more obvious. So yeah.
Yep, especially the hotter the mics you use. Like a lot of people like using those TLMs and things like that push that ASMR range of the mouth noises just through the roof. So if you're gonna go for those crispy vocals or really hot mics like that are accentuated on the highs, get really comfortable with editing, because you're going to need to mess with it. Not necessarily even a lot. I use Melodyne and it works amazingly, but you will have to give the vocals some love.
Yeah, and I like all that stuff as well, that hearing the breath, intake of breath. But like I said, if you compress it too much, it ends up being and then the vocal sounds really quiet.
Yeah, I
don't mind breaths at all.
The breaths. It's the little like clicks and stuff at the end of the phrases that you don't always want.
It's that bit, yeah. So as we were saying earlier about things making it sound more human, leaving breaths in is like fantastic for that. And like you say, the intake of breath before jumping into the chorus or something. Yeah, brilliant.
I always prefer to like clip gain it down rather than remove it entirely.
Yeah, because like I said, otherwise it's like really fucking loud, and then the vocal comes down like really tiny, and you think it's like.
It's a real fine line. I'm usually somewhere in the middle. Like I don't like it when things are edited completely silent. That's why even when I use gates generally on instruments, I don't make them gate to infinity. I usually just make them drop by 20 dB or something, just to ease some of the life in there. But like with the mouth noises and the breaths, it's a fine line between making it sound weird and amazing. And so what I try to do is once I've made a decision on, especially something like breaths, like how much of the breath are you going to leave in there, I try to bounce it and then go do something that's distracting and listen to it kind of in the background. And if it distracts me, I know that I did something bad. Like if I'm just around the house doing something and I hear that, I'm like, what's up with that vocal? Then I'm like, oh, I screwed that up. Let's pull back the processing, because that's my rule of thumb. If it's distracting, you screwed up, unless it's really supposed to be distracting. But in general, most mixing is not about pulling somebody out of the moment. At least it's not supposed to be.
Just while we're talking about vocals, there was the backing vocal in that track as well. To my mind, it sounded as like level in quality and volume as the lead vocal. It wasn't doing the job as a backing vocal, and as a result, the two parts were treading on each other's toes quite a bit. Again, just personal preference. I'd make that backing vocal thinner and more reverby or something, just to like push it behind the lead vocal, so it's not sort of trying to take up the same space at the same time. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of took it to be more of a duet rather than like a lead vocal and a backing vocal, because it was like a male female thing. And maybe like if we understood the lyrics, like that would shed some light on it as well. But another thing is like if you have your lead vocal center and you're going to have a duet voice come in under it or beside it, why not just automate the pan slightly right, slightly left on those two, and then they can have a bit of space to themselves.
Only thing I have is, was that Spanish for the track?
I thought it sounded sort of Russian or somewhere around that part of the world.
Hang on, I'm listening to it again.
Yeah, I'm not the person to ask on that one.
I'm just a lover of languages.
So if it helps, Victor is in the Bucharest time zone.
Okay, so
Love to see great music come out of everywhere, man.
yeah, I mean that's great. I love that we have international musicians and stuff, and like also stunned by the quality of the last 3 songs we listened to. Like this has been amazing.
Yeah, I get so much out of these mixed reviews. Like it's great to provide feedback to people, but I just love hearing all of this different stuff that I normally wouldn't be that exposed to. The last thing I'll say on this, there's always a last thing with me. The one more last thing I've got is that the vocals had that really big doubled kind of effect to them, and I loved most of it. It's another one of the things where I think subtlety matters. So maybe in the beginning, make them less oomphy, like pull back some of the doubling on them just a little bit. I'm not saying to pull it so like it's thin, but just pull it back so you have somewhere to go, so that when those choruses do hit, you ease it out a little bit more, make the doubling more present, and then pull it back a little. So just a little push and pull, I think goes a long way. Again, very subtle. I'm talking minutia here, but those little things really make a track for me. I go, oh wow, that was really interesting how everything went up and everything pulled down just a little bit in different ways.
I'd just like to add as well, you saying about using gates and that on the vocal. Try using expanders. They're not quite as aggressive as gates, and it'll smooth it in a little bit more. And out, obviously.
And then for anybody that knows Wayne, set up your top-down mixing.
Coming soon.
And right after that will be my series on bottom-up mixing.
Did we go a whole hour without talking about sidechaining?
No, we went 54 minutes and 20
Don't
seconds
start,
when you
don't
brought it up.
Yeah. But to be fair, different techniques for different styles. All of these songs were not an aggressive electronic style where you see, that side chaining the kick as a very common aggressive pumping sound. Just doesn't apply in these. Now, could you still use creative, compression? Sure, you can do anything you want. But yeah, different genres have different techniques and different interesting stuff. We're gonna end it with these 3 songs today. We've got another song that Jeff had submitted, but we're not gonna have time to get to it today. So we are gonna, do more of these, and we'll start off with Jeff next time, Mr. Woods. And from there, this has been a great session. I will say it's been really awesome hearing this music, and it's been great just seeing everybody else's perspectives as well. So I hope everybody else is getting a lot out of this. I know I am. And then, if you guys want to close with anything, go for it.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody as well. It's a big deal sending your mixes into people you don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's a really fucking big deal. Probably, I'm not sure I'd be willing to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's it takes a lot of confidence to and to have your work pulled apart basically by strangers. You know? So that's I'm really pleased the way it's gone. It's great. And again, I'm also surprised at the level of musicianship. I was expecting 3 EDM tracks that were going to be like 4 to the floor. And that'd be it. I was like, oh. But, we didn't. So it's great.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
And we made a pact to not listen to these beforehand because we didn't want to cheat. Anybody could, listen to these songs and come up with a page of feedback after giving it 20 listens. But, part of the spontaneity is half the fun of, what do we get out of it on that first listen? You only get one chance to hear something for the first time.
Yeah, I'm really loved it, and really hope that we get more of these, get more people in, and just had a lot of fun, guys. Just keep making, just keep producing, and reach your true peak.
Yeah, I had a great time. I really love doing this. Thank you to everyone who submitted. That's a huge thing, like Wayne said. I can't wait to do the next one. And I promise that next time I'll have a light or something so that I don't slowly fade into the darkness like I did today. All right. Thanks, guys. Can't wait for the next one.
Same here. Yeah, thank you to everybody. Great to see you all, and really looking forward to the next one of these. That was really, really good fun. Thank you.
All right. Peace. We'll see you. Oh, yeah. For those that aren't aware, come to the True Peak Mix and Mastering page. We've got the group on Facebook where we do more interactions, and we really try to build a great community there. So in case anybody wasn't already aware, which you probably were, but in case you weren't, we'll see you around there. All right. Later, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Toodles.